welcome back to Cultivated Live from Planet 13. One quick show note, I think we're calling it. You may hear construction noise because while Planet 13 is an amazing place, it is about to get more amazing with, I think, a museum, a consumption lounge, awesome stuff. You can't see it off camera back here, but also yesterday we were watching gummies be made in their blasting kitchen. Today I think it's beverages, which is a good lead-in to our guests. Laura and Laylee, thank you so much for being here from Blunt Strategies. We're going to talk Minnesota. And everybody says Minnesota beverages because you get beverages at Total Wine. Cannabis beverages, right? But tell us a little bit.
That's only the beginning of where you can get them.
I want to hear the rest of it, but give us a background about Blunt Strategies first, and then we'll get into the rest of it.
Yeah, so Blunt Strategies is Minnesota's first and I think still only full-service public affairs consultancy dedicated to the cannabis industry. We started in 2019 on the heels of when the Farm Bill opened up the industrial hemp program, and Minnesota started having a lot of folks beginning to expand into that market, and we knew that they would be strong allies towards moving towards an even more expanded market for adult use. And so we started with doing a lot of the grass tops advocacy to bring adult use legalization at the same time that we were working with that legal hemp industry. And now that we have legal adult use, we're now working with clients in that realm.
And it seems to be a pretty unique path from an outsider's perspective. I think it's how it's happening, but there are legal cannabis, like THC products, available outside of adult use cannabis dispensary that is more normalized than I think in almost every legal market at this point. How does that affect, I guess, normalization? How does it affect conversations with grass tops, for your perspective?
Oh, I mean, the joke nationally was that Minnesota accidentally legalized edibles, and there was nothing.
That's what Jeremy wrote, by the way.
Yeah, that's my fault. That's my fault. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it was funny because I think for the Republicans it was accidental, but for the rest of us it was absolutely not accidental. I mean, for one, these products were already on the market, and the legislators that really led on that legalization, it was to ensure that there was regulation around it. But we also knew that once those low-dose hemp-derived products were on the market and consumers were able to access THC and they would, start to access those products, that it would reduce the stigma and create that glide path towards full adult use legalization. But yeah, in Minnesota, you can find hemp-derived THC products of all varieties. I mean, it's not just in, Total Wine and places like this. You find it at the bowling alley, my ski lodge has it, when you go to the chalet, you can get it at the hair salon, at the hotels are starting to put them in their rooms, bridal boutiques.
Really?
When you're getting your bridal dress, instead of getting a glass of champagne, you can have a nice cannabis beverage. So it's very normalized, and it means the consumer base is fundamentally different as well. We see people of all ages.
Legal ages.
Of all legal ages.
Right. That was implied.
Consuming
always implied.
the products. It's exciting.
And it also just led to a different kind of creativity, I think, in our market. So, as Laylee was saying, it opened this door, and to your question, it did reduce stigma because people that had not had any opportunity to consider what cannabis could be to them besides what they maybe thought smoking and maybe end of list. So this was a really great way to just kind of unleash the market to think about all the different ways that it could add access and entry points and have a whole spectrum of experiences that people could try and consider. And that was something that I think is really special in Minnesota and has really maintained even after we've gotten past the legal legislation moment. As we're waiting on the full legal industry to come online, we still have these amazing products and ideas and different ways that people are connecting with cannabis already well in effect.
I wonder, thinking ahead to not a more normalized market, but where there are adult use cannabis dispensaries in Minnesota, there has been this preamble to it that has pretty wide acceptance. How is the new legal framework going to impact the old companies doing business? Like, have you started thinking about that with like regulators and stuff, but also the companies, have they started thinking about how they make this? It's not even a transition. It's just like there's going to be new markets, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the Minnesota model of legalization, and this was very intentional. It is predicated on creating a marketplace that is dominated by small local craft businesses. And so a lot of these businesses are ones that have already been operating in this low-dose hemp-derived space. And it's been great because it's allowed them to establish their brands, their products, their footprints, their consumer bases, their supply chains, all of those things. But it means now for even new companies that want to come in, a lot of them are able to get started now in that hemp-derived space, or they're coming in adult use, but the way they're thinking about setting up, say, a dispensary, I think is really informed by what the consumer experience is right now purchasing those low-dose products. I think in Minnesota, the idea of having, a dispensary where you're coming in and there's a foyer and you have to show, that's not what people expect, because they're already used to going into a shop that's selling THC products and interacting with the product, similar to what you would with anything else. So I think that's really going to inform what the dispensary culture is. Minnesota's also allows for things like consumption lounges and things like that. We know in the Twin Cities that's going to be a big thing. It's supported by local policymakers as well as by the general public. So I think it's just...
I heard they're going to move MJ Biz to the Twin Cities.
Oh, we welcome
Oh,
it.
I heard that too. I definitely heard that. It should absolutely not be in December if they're going to do it.
I think in February in Minnesota.
Yeah, even more ideal. No, it's been really interesting though, and then this has been a lot of the work of Blunt Strategies now. We obviously were on the front lines with the legislative process and getting that accomplished, and we've been building this business, as Laylee mentioned, the whole time as well. And so we've been working with these companies, building relationships, understanding how they see themselves in the market. And now we're working actively with them to help them think about what is that transition. Do I want to transition? The beautiful thing is that you can stay where you are in the market that already exists in Minnesota. You can you can do so many things, and that's what we've been working with clients on, is helping them think about, okay, what is my business plan? What is my business model? What are the regulatory considerations I might want to be thinking about? And then that's where we really pride ourselves on also bringing in some great partnerships, to make sure that we can really help people think about that holistically.
And what is the ecosystem? I mean, I think the fundamental way in which, the way we're engaging with clients that's both exciting and different is that these guys don't see one another as competition. They see each other as being partners in, again, building this ecosystem that is supposed to be dominated by small local businesses. And so that's really exciting, and working with them is not just what's your business plan, blah, 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 but it's how do we bring all of you together to build the infrastructure all of you need to be successful, bring a lot of collaboration. And I mean, fundamentally, these guys all collaborated in helping to draft the legislation.
Right. Yeah.
And that's...
I was going to say, I think that's also part of the uniqueness in Minnesota is that, because we don't have ballot initiatives, because we had to go through a legislative process, there was so much education that had to happen, and bringing people along to help them, understand how were we actually going to get from A to B. And yeah, we got to bring in all these people and learn with them and grow with them, and they really got to see how that was going to come about. And I think that has led to a different kind of skin in the game for them, and has certainly helped to educate us, because we got to talk to a lot of different people about the different permutations about how they wanted to enter the market. And I do think that it has led to a more successful and more collaborative, to use Laylee's word, which I think is exactly right, infrastructure that's already baked into this thing, because folks are already coming from a place of, we did this together, now we're going to grow it together.
Can you talk about your own career path to date? Because I imagine maybe 15 years ago you never thought you'd be in this position, starting a legal affairs consultancy for cannabis companies. So how did you see the opportunity, and how did you have the courage to go for it?
Well, I mean, I think if I really think back, me ending up in the cannabis industry is probably the least surprising thing ever. But my pathway to this was, I was in academia. I'm a lawyer by training. I worked in academia on large kind of multidisciplinary, I worked on governance structures for emerging technology. So things where it's emergent and you have to shape it. You don't have regs in place. You don't have norm standards
Sounds familiar.
in place. And it ended up being really applicable in this area. But, where Laura and I really started is, political consultants. We're strategists, and we're both cannabis enthusiasts. We wanted to work in a legal cannabis industry, but we wanted it to be one that that would be exciting and be a kind of model we would be excited to lead. And so it was just, I think, that natural penchant we have for political advocacy and activism that led us to take up this cause.
I have a major in English and a French
Same.
minor, so super, super helpful. My background was in marketing for high-tech software, so not quite as crystal clear, but certainly similar themes of how do you take something that is complex and difficult or even dry and find a way to connect it with people's emotions, connect it with their desire to do something, to be called to action. I like to joke that Laylee's the architect and I'm the carpenter, which isn't to say that Laylee's not like doing crown molding sometimes, because she's absolutely down with me in the carpentry as well. But she really approached me with this idea, and we were both at points in our career where it was like, okay, we could keep doing what we're doing, or we could try something new. And that was how we started our working together. And then Blunt Strategies, it was this very natural progression of the skills we had built, the networks we had built, the interest we had built, and not for nothing, knowing that we had the privilege to enter that space and be able to do some of the code switching that needed to happen from the grassroots to the grass tops in order to make it happen in Minnesota. And
we continue to do work outside of cannabis. We do a lot of work in housing, and we're a public benefit business, so we work on a lot of these issues.
Environmental
and
sustainability.
Where that becomes important is in places like the legislature, because when we're working on things, we're not always trading on that same political cap. It's not cannabis political capital. It's, these folks know us from being engaged in the community in other realms as well. And that's become important now in cannabis with the clients that we work with. It's a lot about in addition to opening a dispensary, what are the other things you're going to be doing to contribute to your community? And these folks are very civically engaged, as Minnesotans generally are.
Yeah.
And is required by a lot of cannabis companies. We had on Tahir Johnson in Trenton, New Jersey, and he was an advocate, and now he's going to be an owner-operator. And in between, it's basically real estate development and municipal affairs and state affairs, and the sign-off from every, you really need to be on it to get to day zero, and then you need to be a great operator to get to day beyond that. But it's really, we've heard this story 3 times today, and it's not even 10 o'clock in the morning, but it really is a very compelling thing. And I just want to zoom out for a sec to sort of end on this note. Minnesota, in the neighborhood, is going to have a lot of states that are not legal yet, legal from adult use perspective, but are nibbling at the edges, I think. Do you think that's going to move Wisconsin? Do you think it's going to move South Dakota? And South Dakota has a history with it, but what do you think is going to happen? What is the impact of Minnesota on, of course, Minnesotans, but actually in the neighborhood as well?
Yeah, I think it does help move the dial a bit in some of these other states, but I think we had to take, by nature of, as Laura was saying, we don't have ballot initiatives, we have a divided government. We, are the only state that's been able to legalize by legislation without a Democratic supermajority, and for a long time we had split legislature. The culture of Minnesota in many ways is similar to a lot of the states that have yet to legalize, especially the ones around it. And so we had to go about the process of legalizing very differently than other states have. It had to be locally led. It had to resonate with local sensibilities. The fundamental approach to coalition building needed to be different. And so that template for legalization, where you have a national group come in, they prop up, a state campaign, and like that's not going to work in a lot of these other states. So now where really our interest in engaging with other states, especially the ones around us that haven't legalized yet, is to go in and not say this is how you duplicate what we did, but these are sort of the fundamental, lessons for, these things like how to do the coalition building, the messaging, etc., differently, in ways that we hope kind of helps supercharge them. Also, a state like Wisconsin, they also have a lot of businesses that are producing hemp-derived products, many of whom have relationships in Minnesota or are also operating in Minnesota. And those folks, just as in Minnesota, they became really critical advocates and helped move this along. We're hoping that in Wisconsin we can do the same thing, get folks organized, animated, so that they're using sort of their commercial activities to begin driving some political activism towards that.
We also don't mind a little bit of Minnesota exceptionalism. So, absolutely, we want to see this federally legalized. We want to see other states be able to do what they need to do to get where we are. And we welcome anyone and everyone, whether they're from our surrounding states that have not yet legalized or anywhere else, to come to Minnesota and see how great it really is.
Yeah, well, it's generally a good place to be. The state surrounded by not legal states for the businesses on the border. Like you think of like Arizona and like those dispensaries do crazy business, like even in Southern Nevada, right? Like it's just amazing. Well, I think Minnesota's very lucky to have you both. And I think having known you prior to this conversation, like it really does take advocates, business people, smart folks from a variety of fields that have backgrounds like yours to actually get it across the finish line. And so thank you for the work you do. Good luck to you as Minnesota continues this path. And thank you so much for being here.
Thanks
Our
for having
pleasure.
us.
Thanks for having us.
Great. We were with Blunt Strategies, which was lovely to talk about Minnesota and even the surrounding area and what it means. We'll be right back after a short break with Brittany Melville to talk about Forte Operations and what that's all about and what it means for cannabis operators, especially dispensaries. Thank you so much. We'll be right back with Brittany from Planet 13.
All right. Thank you.